This is 2OF Entertainment.
Guys, so this one is weird because I've been trying to make this video for, well, it's coming up to 3 weeks, just over 2.5 weeks now. And why? Because this video I wanted to respond to the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States of America, who was also the 45th President of the United States of America, which of course is Donald Trump. And of course, Donald Trump, he likes to do those executive order things, and he likes to make all of these policy announcements and what have you. And of course, there was definitely going to be implications for the car industry. And I thought, well, let me see what he's announced and let me see how that affects the car industry. Now, the trouble is, and I'm not even joking, but every time I've sort of done a little bit of research, written a script, I thought, okay, done it, right, I'll record that tomorrow morning. And you wake up the next morning and then something else has happened, or he's announced something else, or, tariffs have been announced, or then they haven't been announced, or somebody's retaliated, or what, it's just been constantly, it's been a moving goal, and it's been actually really difficult to keep up with this, but there seems to be a little bit of a lull at the moment. There seems to be, I don't know if I dare say that, but there seems to be a little bit of a lull. So since there's a bit of a lull, then let me finally, put on record some of what's been going on and where I think it may go and how it might affect what to us is the most important thing, which is the car industry. See, on the face of it, when Trump was elected and the initial things that he said and what have you, a lot of people were like, okay, well, this is great for the car industry. He's going to be the man for the car industry because he wants to drill, baby, drill is what he said. So he's all about the oil and gas. A lot of car enthusiasts are like, well, that means, more petrol cars. And then he was like, we'll get the factories producing cars and stuff like that. But it's not actually as simple as that. There's a lot more to it. And in fact, a lot of what he said there and then what he said since kind of contradicts itself. So, well, I'll tell you what, let's get into it right after this. And with hope, fingers crossed, that by the time I edit and upload this, not too much has changed.
A brown car guy.
Right, so let's get to this sequel, and not a great sequel, that's got a lot of, that keeps adding plot turns and twists and surprises, and, it sort of tries to do that, oh, you didn't see that coming, did you? But then, like, if you do it once or twice in a good movie, it works, but if you keep doing it over and over again, you're just like, oh, it's a bit like, what were those series of movies? Final Destination, if you've ever seen those. I mean, it was just like, how can we come up more and more bizarre and crazy ways to kill people that were supposed to be dead but aren't? Anyway, let's get on to the Trump auto tariff circus. The tariff tantrum, or maybe that's another way we could describe it, right? So, some days ago, in the latest of an avalanche of executive orders and whatnot and announcements and like I said, policy decisions, major policy decisions in some cases, Trump announced that he was going to put 25% tariff on all cars and parts from Mexico and Canada. And you think that, well, he's trying to protect the homegrown industry, so that's what you do. Car makers were panicking, economists were sobbing into their spreadsheets, and car buyers, well, ultimately, they were ending up Googling about whether it would be cheaper to buy a horse, because that's where this actually matters. Now, and the reason why it does is because it's easy to say that, let's just put tariffs on Canada, let's put tariffs on Mexico, but actually a lot of cars, if not entire cars, but certainly their parts for cars that are sold or even assembled in America actually come from Canada and Mexico. A massive chunk of the automotive supply chain, in fact. GM, Ford, Stellantis, Volkswagen, they don't just sell cars in America, they build them across North and South America. So when this happened, and this was the most recent thing, And then, of course, Mexico said some things, and Justin Trudeau stood up and gave a speech, and he kind of said that we're going to retaliate and we're going to do this. And, what was it? What did he say? He said your bourbon's going to cost you more money. And this is the other thing. I just want to talk about tariffs. Just before we carry on for a minute, just understand the concept of tariff. Tariffs are what Donald Trump says is the most beautiful word. I love tariffs. Well, here's the thing with tariffs. All the tariffs actually is whatever product that you're importing, right? It's making that product more expensive. So tariffs doesn't just hit the country that's exporting them. You go, we'll put tariffs against them. That'll teach them. But also it will teach you, because if you rely on buying products from that country, or some part of what you buy comes from that country, then that means that what you buy is also going to be more expensive. So it's actually going to cost you more. So what you actually do is you charge the Americans more money to buy these vehicles. I think it was GM, for example. They said, look, that's going to put, GM said that if the tariffs happen, prices of their vehicles would go up $3,000 per vehicle. $3,000 per vehicle in America for GM, a homegrown American car manufacturer. That's what they said if these tariffs happen. So anyway, Canada was like, okay, well, we'll crack down on fentanyl smuggling, which was, of course, the other thing that he was talking about. If you won't tax our cars, and you'll continue to get your bourbon, I suppose. And Mexico said that we're going to send 10,000 National Guard troops to reinforce the border. Nothing says peaceful trade negotiations using tariffs like a mobilization of 10,000 armed troops. Anyway, so that's what's happened. So what's happened now is that there's a kind of 30-day stay order. There's a 30-day stay of execution on this. The tariffs are on hold. So if Mexico and Canada don't completely, appease Donald Trump's demands, he could hit that resume button on downloading those tariffs. And you might think, well, okay, let's see what happens, what have you. But I mean, that's okay for us. But for businesses, it's an absolute disaster, because they're kind of left hanging. And if you understand at all how the car industry, how the automotive industry works, there are very, very long lead times, not just in product development, but also in manufacturing and assembly lines. Not everything is stored at a factory. Parts come in, they come in on time. Just-in-time production process is what it's called. And part of that relies on the right part arriving and being at the right part of the factory at the right time for the right cost. So it's all sort of a well-oiled mechanism that works like clockwork when it works. But doing something like this is essentially putting a spanner into those works and causing the whole thing to come to a bit of a grinding halt. So businesses left hanging, and they're wondering, well, what do we do? Should we raise prices just in case? Should we keep importing? Should we stop importing? Should we set up an entire local component supply industry, which, oh God, that is a major investment? Or should we just let's not build any more factories. Let's just build more churches, synagogues, temples, and mosques and gurdwaras, because we just all need to pray. Because there isn't any other solution. There's no other logical solution, with the tariffs, in a sense, in some ways, the damage has actually already been done, even though the tariffs are on hold. But the instability and uncertainty that they've created has caused problems. The car industry hates uncertainty. Like I said, they operate on, if you just think of the life cycle of a vehicle, the production life cycle, you're talking 3, 5, or 7 years. So if you're looking 7 years ahead, you've just put a vehicle to market and you're already developing the next vehicle, which is 7 years from now. So you think of the long lead times that involves. They make, essentially billion-dollar investments years in advance. So GM, Ford, Volkswagen, Stellantis, they're all scrambling around. And some of them are looking for ways to can we move production out of Mexico? Could that be possible? But we're talking entrenched factories and industries and communities that are focused around parts supply, component supply, production supply, assembly lines, deliveries, shipping. It's really not that easy. And so Volkswagen, for example, they build 350,000 cars in Mexico for the U.S. market. That's a massive chunk. And for the UK, for example, that would be that's more than a quarter, well over more than a quarter than our entire sales for the year. So aside from that, the other thing that, of course, he talked about was that he was cancelling the EV mandate. Now the thing is that it's weird because I was a bit confused by that because I didn't think that America actually had an EV mandate in the way that we have one here. We have the ZEV mandate, or the electric vehicle trading scheme, trading unit investment scheme, or whatever it's called. I can't remember the exact word, but we call it the ZEV mandate here. So, and he was like, I'm gonna, come down on EVs, like somebody who's insulted him on Twitter or something like that. So, but what he actually did, so it wasn't actually a mandate. So what he actually did was he scrapped Joe Biden, the previous president, he scrapped the Biden era push. That way, it was a push for 50% of new cars to be sold in America by 2030 should all be electric. So that's basically gone. And he described that as government overreach, which you could argue. I mean, we've argued against governments forcing people to buy electric cars. People should buy electric cars because they're right for them, because they make sense for their lifestyle, their budget, their pockets, what they need them to do. That's why people should buy electric cars, not because they're being forced to by governments, because that's just not how these things work, right? But anyway, so in that sense, I suppose you could say he was right. Hey, are you enjoying this video? Then make sure you hit the like button. It's very important. Plus, comment, share, and make sure you're subscribing. So the thing was that that 2030 thing was backed up by tax credits in order to make EVs more affordable. So I think, of course, those I'm assuming are also gone. It was a $7,500 EV tax credit. So so that's not happening anymore, and they're rolling back on charging stations as well. Charging, of course, the charging infrastructure being the big thing. Trump rolling back on federal investment in those. So it's more, if there isn't an infrastructure, then that's one of the biggest things that puts off potentially people are looking to buy EVs. That's the biggest thing that actually puts them off. Is like, where do I charge it? Now you may be wondering, where does this all leave his right-hand rich man in reserve, his bromance buddy, Elon Musk, because Elon Musk, of course, owns Tesla, and Tesla, used to be, I think it's fair to say, the number one seller of electric cars in the world. I think that has changed because BYD, I believe, has overtaken them in terms of electrified vehicles. And actually, this month, January, or last month I should say, we're now in February, but in January, I think there has been a significant drop. And you know what, I'm going to make a separate video on that because that's a whole other thing. But just coming back to Elon, so how does this impact him then? Well, I think two things. Yeah, certainly it will hurt, but two things. When you talk about the EV charging infrastructure, of course, Tesla has the supercharger infrastructure, which is already in place. So, although you could argue that, we've seen all of the, videos and things on Instagram, what have you, with the long queues around these superchargers, but the charging infrastructure is in place. And additionally, if the tariffs do happen, they wouldn't necessarily affect him because his supply for the American market is built pretty much entirely in America. So there's a thing there where actually he wouldn't be as worse off as maybe people think. Of course, the rebate or whatever it was called, the tax credit would be gone. But then he had already reduced his prices by pretty much that amount anyway. Last 2 years ago, I think it was. So he would have to compensate in that way. Now, Europe and UK. So what does it mean for us? Well, so this is the thing. So he started talking about tariffs, and then he started talking about doing things to all the countries of the world. Like he wants Denmark, and he wants to rename the Panama Canal, and God knows, picking a fight with not Denmark. So he wants Greenland, so he's picking a fight with Denmark, etc., etc. Now for Europe, he said that he's going to introduce tariffs. We don't know he hasn't done that yet. That announcement, by the time you're watching this, he might have made that announcement. But we don't know what that is going to be, but he said he would. And then when he was asked on UK, he said, yeah, UK's being naughty as well, but we can work something out there. So I don't know. So it looks like of course, this is entirely unpredictable, but it looks like currently on the face of it, that it's possible that he would hit Europe with tariffs, but he might not hit the UK with tariffs. Now, even if these tariffs don't hit Europe, although if they do, it would get really bad really quickly. But even if even if it doesn't, the entire auto industry is suffering because of the high cost of components, parts. Because the car industry is very interconnected. Parts and gearboxes and things and brakes and things are made in all different parts of the world and shipped, and all of these things would be affected by tariffs and what have you. But in Europe in particular, if he hits Europe with tariffs, a large part of the imports for America are European cars. German, we're talking Mercedes, BMW, obviously Volkswagen, what have you. So suddenly, if you hit those people with tariffs and they can't sell as many cars, which is, America is a big market for them, if they can't sell as many cars in America, then that means that they, A, have to cut costs, reduce production, and B, with the little that they have now, they have to make up more from it, which means they have to increase their margins on those, which means more expensive cars for the rest of us. Yes, us as well, in Europe and in the UK. We would eventually end up with more expensive cars because America would put tariffs on Europe. So the repercussions of that would also impact us as well. So that's a problem. Now, where in the UK we have a slight advantage, if we don't get hit by tariffs, we don't really produce cars of enough quantity to make it a huge difference. But whilst we would find that our favorite BMWs and Mercs and what have you would be getting more expensive, on the other hand, it probably hasn't, gone unnoticed by you, the increasing influx of Chinese brands. In fact, I'm going to an introduction next week of yet another new Chinese brand that is coming into this market, which is actually already successfully launched in several other markets. So a lot of Chinese are coming in. We don't have any tariffs or anything against the Chinese. And it's quite possible that, and also China isn't actually worried about Trump's tariffs either, as much as you might think that the whole point of the Trump thing should be to protect the American car industry against China, which is making the most aggressive moves in the global car industry. But in fact, China doesn't actually sell that many cars in America. China dominates other markets, particularly right now Europe, and that includes the UK. But also if you look at the Far East, Africa, Middle East, when I was in Dubai in December, I was absolutely flabbergasted, if I can use that word, at the amount of Chinese cars on the roads there. When I was there just 6 years ago, they were still a rarity, and now it's just like, they were the norm. So these Chinese makers are dominating these markets, and not necessarily America. So America puts tariffs on China. China be like, well, that's okay. We didn't sell that many there anyway. But we can now actually sell even more to the rest of the world because the European cars are going to get more expensive. UK doesn't even have any tariffs against Chinese cars. We can actually flood more Chinese cars, BYD, NIO, MG, Xpeng, whatever it is, all these others, Great Wall Motors. They're all, I mean, even as it is, they're already undercutting rivals from Volkswagen, Ford, etc., etc. But, with this situation, they would expand even more aggressively. So you could be thinking that, well, a 3 Series electric i4 or something at 60, 70 grand and an equivalent version from one of these Chinese models with pretty much all the same kit, same performance, and probably a better range at maybe 30 grand. I mean, that'd be a significant saving. But that is probably what we're looking at, and you may find in the UK with the whole idea of tariffs initially being to protect the global car industry against the influx of Chinese car makers, but in fact the opposite might actually happen. We might actually end up all driving Chinese cars in the very near future, whether we wanted to or not. Personally, I think the quality of the Chinese cars is actually really good now. So fair. If it's a good car at a good price, then why not? But if that's not what you wanted, then it's probably what is going to happen. If you were thinking, tariffs, good idea, we'll stop those Chinese. It's like, no, actually, I think the Chinese will be all right. The legacy car industry is the industry that's actually going to suffer because of this. So that's where I think we are at now. Right now, at this moment, as I record this, and I record this on 7th of February on a Friday in the afternoon. So as I record this, that's where I think things stand. But having said that, any predictions I made in this video are probably null and void because they could change at any moment, depending on whatever next announcement or executive order Mr. President decides to announce or issue. So anything could happen. Stay tuned. I'll try and keep on top of it, and I'll try and keep updating you as much as I can. And yeah, let me know also what you think or what your predictions are of what he's going to do and what's going to happen, and B, how that will impact the car industry both in the short and the long term. What will you be driving in the year 2030, and which country will it be made in? Don't forget to hit like, share, subscribe, all the rest of it, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Hi guys, I've been writing. This is my first book, a novel, an all-out action thriller, and this one is a collection of 13 stories I've written over the course of 2 decades. The Ulysses Files and the Quantum Races by BC Guy are out now on Amazon.com.